For the main Mediavine network, what percentage is like independent publishers and how much are more traditional legacy publishers?
We are mostly independent publishers. Something that's been amazing is that like most of our publishers are like 1 to 2 person teams that are writing the content, doing everything themselves. That's kind of been like the bread and butter of Mediavine. We recently have introduced an enterprise product where we're starting to work with more legacy publishers. Historically, those are much more unique setups, and they have been around for so long that as you're going to tag up their site, it's not as simple as saying, here's an ad script. They also have their own ad sales teams. Like it's a whole world enterprise. We are slowly dipping our toes in it and growing there. But for now, I would say we're mostly independent publishers.
Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. In 2004, Eric Hochberger co-founded Mediavine, which would eventually become one of the most influential ad management companies on the open web. The company didn't start as an ad tech firm. It began as a scrappy collection of SEO-fueled fan sites built by 3 founders chasing traffic in the early blogosphere. While selling $50 sidebar ads and offering SEO consulting services, Eric and his partners learned firsthand how fragile and inconsistent early digital advertising could be. That experience ultimately pushed Mediavine to build its own header bidding system in 2014, a move that quadrupled the company's ad revenue and transformed it from a publisher into an ad management platform. Today, Mediavine represents roughly 17,000 publishers and operates with a 140-person team, primarily serving independent creators rather than legacy media brands. In a recent interview, Eric pulled back the curtain on how programmatic advertising actually works, why made-for-advertising sites are siphoning off industry dollars, and how Google's AI overviews are reshaping traffic patterns, sometimes wiping out entire businesses overnight. If you want to listen to an audio version of this show, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcast. Okay, let's jump into the interview. Hey Eric, thanks for joining us.
Hey Simon, it's great to be here.
So I'm super excited to talk to you because you started a company that stretches back into the early blogosphere, which is when I got my start. So I feel like this is going to be a pure nostalgic play for a podcast episode. It'll be fun to talk about those times. You run a company called Mediavine. It's basically an advertising network for, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and we'll get into this, but it seems like programmatic advertising. For websites, primarily like blogs and news websites and stuff like that. So specifically monetizing their websites. Maybe you monetize other things. We'll get into that as well. I'd love to just talk about the origin story. I was looking at your LinkedIn. I didn't really see what you were doing before this, but like it seems that you founded Mediavine in 2004. Were you working in the advertising industry prior to that?
No, so yeah, we're definitely going to take a trip down memory lane. So let's go back real nostalgic. 2004 is when we did start Mediavine. The reason there's not much on my LinkedIn before that is because I actually graduated college in 2003. So I had a very short career between college and Mediavine where, interesting, I did a little stint as a mortgage broker, as well as doing some lead generation for sites like creditcards.com, back then doing SEO. So that was like a little 1-year period. Worked for a company called Veritech.
So what did you see as the opportunity? Because like 2004, newspapers are like starting to put their content online, but it's basically just taking stuff from their print newspapers and just like copying, just posting it to the web when the print issue goes live. Most of the online content that was published during the day was like, in blogs, but blogs obviously were still pretty small compared to what they, eventually became. 2004, I think, was the year where the Dan Rather controversy happened, and that's when the blogosphere got covered a lot in the mainstream news because they found out that those documents that ended up on 60 Minutes were possibly faked. So take me into 2004. You're just out of college. What did you see as the opportunity here?
I mean, I wish I could. I think everyone has one of these I stumbled into it kind of stories, but I'll give you our origin story. So we were actually doing SEO for hire for a few companies at the time. We would actually run what we would call the fun sites because they were easier to gather links to. And so back then in 2004, our sites were like, I'm trying to remember all of them. A Grey's Anatomy fan site was like, I think, our biggest site at the time. Then around 2006 is when we launched the Hollywood Gossip. And the inspiration for a lot of these and where we picked which content we were doing was honestly what was viral at the time, what was easiest to cover. This sounds lame, but we were just 3 guys writing content. And we were like, what can we do that will produce 20 pieces of content a day? Because back then, content was king. How quickly could you produce? And so we used a thing called blog ads, which used to like publish
Henry
everybody's stats.
Henry Copeland, right?
Yeah. And so like back then, Perez Hilton was, I think, the top earner on blog ads. And we're like, oh, okay, we need a gossip site. Got it.
So it was like you and three other young guys. Were they co-founders of Mediavine? And so you started out like just creating your own content.
Correct. Yeah. No, it was me and two business partners and me. Yeah. We were bootstrapped from the beginning, and it was just the three of us basically doing everything at the beginning.
So the plan wasn't to build your own advertising network to start with. You were just going to like blog ads was like an early native blog advertising. It was like a little sidebar that went on the blogs. So you wanted to get enough traffic so that you can get invited to join some kind of blog ads network, and then you were just going to embed that sidebar. How successful was that?
Oh, back then we thought it was successful. We would sell an ad spot in the sidebar. I think it was like $50. You would sell one per month. And every time we sold one, we'd celebrate, run in and accept it right away. I don't think any of us thought we were going to do this for like a full-time living at that point. It's really, honestly, when we found ad rep firms is what they were called back then. I'm trying to remember the names of all the ones we've been through. But back then, like the big one was Evolve Media, Gorilla Nation, and She Knows were their two sub-brands. And so they kind of, once they introduced this to programmatic, that predated programmatic actually. Once they were doing our ad sales on our behalf, that's when we realized you can make a living off of writing content, which was not a concept I think people knew about in 2004.
What year did they get? Did you? So you got accepted into their networks or whatever?
Yeah, I'd have to go back through old email things. But we're talking like 08, 09.
Oh, 08.
Yeah,
so you guys were just blogging and making some money, some side money through blog ads and maybe I'm guessing Google AdSense or something like that for several years. Was it so? But you all had day jobs at that point.
So our day job was honestly, so I was still doing some mortgage brokering, which I think is like a South Florida tradition. We all kind of did it before 2009. But most of the money for the company at that point was coming from SEO clients. So we still had clients at that point.
Yeah. And were the blogs you were running like lead gen for those clients, or like, hey, we did it for our own sites, so we could do it for yours?
So we would help write content on their sites. We'd help them set up blogs. But honestly, our blogs existed just because it was easy to generate a link to a Grey's Anatomy fan site. Like we were, partners with like ABC, and it was very easy to like get press for that. A little harder to get press for like one of our clients was a steel building company, not the sexiest of industries that you could just run out to a PR company. So we would get a link to us, and then we would link from a celebrity gossip site over to a steel building site. And I can't believe Google would consider that and would still pass on the PageRank or the authority. It's a different era of SEO.
Oh, so they weren't hiring you to like SEO optimize their websites. They were just paying you for like high PageRank links.
So it was both. They didn't realize that we were behind the scenes sending them links from the Hollywood gossip. They just knew we were going to rank them top 3 for steel buildings. That's all they cared about. So yeah, we had to optimize their on-page site. We had to create content for them. And then we sent these links, which were honestly our secret sauce back then.
Yeah, and like back then, the Google algorithm was still heavily influenced by PageRank, which was based on not only getting links from the sites, but the authority of those sites that were linking to it. So because your site had a lot of inbound links to it, it gave it higher PageRank when it linked out to other sites. So obviously PageRank probably is like, I don't even know if it still exists, but if it does, it's probably a pretty tiny weight within a algorithm that is probably more focused on like machine learning and stuff like that at this point. But back then, that carried a lot of weight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're monetizing indirectly through this SEO thing, and then you're also generating a little bit of money through ads for the site. So you mentioned that you joined these ad networks. You said these are pre-programmatic, so they were still doing all direct sold ads. So if they didn't sell an ad, you didn't. It's not like you could just run some ad. It was all dependent on them like selling ads in it.
Yeah, and I mean they were backfilled by things like AdSense, which we got to control back then. So that was actually honestly my foray into advertising was what used to be called remnant or backfill ads. But yeah, if they didn't sell campaigns, and so like Q1s were miserable back then, and Q4s were great when you were sold out. and it was a wild ride. There was almost no consistency back then.
And what did that do for you in terms of your business? Like once you had joined these ad networks?
So a lot of that changed where, again, we kind of saw an inflection point where ad revenue finally surpassed what we were making from SEO. And one of the greatest things ever was not having to have clients and being able to do it all for ourselves. So as soon as that was able to pay the bills, we switched over entirely.
And so but this was still, you were just creating your own content and monetizing with ads. So you hadn't tried to build out your own kind of network yet.
Yeah. So I would say from around 2004 to, I don't know, 2014, this was entirely, so the first half of the company's history, we were just content, just publishing. Sometime around 2015 is when actually our ad rep firm was purchased by, I can't even remember the history of all the number of sales they've had, but like private equity purchased, then they were sold to themselves and to someone else. Regardless, they ended up getting rid of what they called affiliates at the time, or third-party ad inventory. They're kind of trying to no longer renew our contract. So rather than renewing at a very reduced rate, we decided we would try this on our own. So I took the remnant ads that I've previously been doing. So back then the names were like AdMeld, PubMatic, Rubicon, which is now Magnite. Many of these are still our partners. AdMeld is actually Google Ad Exchange now. So all three of them are still who we work with today. But at the time, I had a crazy idea. Let me see if I can take the remnant ads and just run those, since those are like backfilling so much of the inventory. And if I could optimize these, so I have an engineering background, let me figure out how to make them actually compete against each other rather than what was the waterfalls at the time. And I mean, the best thing that ever happened to us was that contract happening, because we quadrupled our ad rates that we were making once we went out on our own. So it completely changed the business.
So before you started doing that, like, had you grown your stable websites that you were running, or was it still the couple that you launched in like 2004?
So at that point, we had a stable of, I think, really 4 primary sites at that point. So we had the Hollywood Gossip still, because that was, you could not touch it in terms of traffic. That was so much bigger than the others. We eventually morphed all of our various TV fan sites into a site called TV Fanatic. We had Movie Fanatic, which was like the sister site to it. And we actually started a food site, which actually is what led to the network we have today. And that was Food Fanatic. So we were kind of building out the Fanatic brand at the time.
And was it always like SEO driven, or did you start to build like a repeat homepage audience, or, by that point, social media was really ramping up?
Oh, that was the peak of Facebook traffic, where we had millions of followers. You didn't even have to spend money. You could just get so much organic traffic from Facebook. I would say, honestly, Facebook almost became the dominant traffic source for a lot of our sites. Still a lot of SEO, because that's our bread and butter. You always want free, stable traffic, but social was the way to like flood your site with traffic back then.
And did you ever try to create like highly differentiated content, or was it just kind of like still quick aggregation?
No, this is terrible. To quote one of my business partners, we don't break the news, we just wake up early. So much of it was like, when it came to the Hollywood Gossip, it was like, literally, I have a business partner who wakes up at 5 a.m. and is cranking out content. And then you're competing against a primarily West Coast space. Like TMZ couldn't break a story at like 5 in the morning Eastern time. So we were mostly undifferentiated content on that site. TV Fanatic had a lot of actual unique content. Same with Movie Fanatic. We would go to premieres. We would be on the red carpet interviewing. We had a YouTube channel. We would do original reviews of shows. So there was a lot of actual exclusive content there.
So you said that like you were like selling, or you got specialized in remnant ads. So there was like, the way that, if I understand the terminology, it's like you had the direct sold ads, which you could sell at a higher CPM. But if you ran out of direct sold inventory, there were these ad networks that would just backfill those ads, and those you would get a much lower CPM on that, but it ensured that every page view was monetized. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Exactly. That's perfect. So remnant was really a dirty word back then. It was like a way to backfill ads that would be unsold at the time.
Yeah. So you decide to that ad network tries to break the contract with you. And so I'm trying to understand what Mediavine did that was, so you were plugging into these ad networks. Was it was it that it was the blog interface where all these networks could come in and you could optimize for which ones were offering the best CPMs, or like what was kind of the service that you were providing?
Yeah, so taking you back to 2014, at the time, all ads were done in what's called a waterfall. So you would basically pick who is going to be your primary like network. And let's say at the time it was Magnite, or sorry, Rubicon back then. You'd say, hey, Rubicon, do you have an ad for $1, whatever your floor is? And they would say no. Then they would pass it back to you. And then you would pass it on to, I don't know, let's say PubMatic, and say, hey, do you have an ad for 75 cents? And they'd be like, no. Then you would drop it down. You would keep going down this stack. And what ended up happening is what we found is that you would only really be asking one advertiser at a time. Can you afford this? And therefore, PubMatic would never end up bidding above Magnite because they were always in the second position. And by the time you got down to, I think most of us used AdSense back then to fill at the very bottom, you're making pennies at the bottom. So what we did, what was unique at the time, is now it's called header bidding. There's prebid.org and prebid.js to help everyone do this. But back then there was no way of doing this. And I built my own way of basically asking every partner at the same time, how much would you spend for this inventory? And basically running that simultaneous or asynchronous auction instead of a synchronous one. You were able to have everyone giving their top bid at the beginning. So it went from having basically truly one person owning most of your inventory to we had, I don't even know back then, probably like 6 or 7 different partners that we were partnered with. Now we have 30 plus.
So you weren't like interfacing with the actual advertisers themselves at all. Like these platforms were like responsible for doing the demand, and what you were doing is like here's my website and I'm optimizing like which the CPMs for which ads are coming through. So it's like there's like demand. These were supply side platforms or demand side platform. Like one of you was a supply side platform and a demand side platform, right?
Yeah. So we would hook up. No, you're using the right term. So SSP or supply side partners or platforms are places like Magnite or PubMatic. We also would work with some demand side partners, which are the DSPs, and that's who actually interfaces with the advertisers and the agencies. Some of those we would work directly with back then, and we still do today. But for the most part, you hook up with these SSPs, and then the DSPs hook up to them, and then the advertisers are actually putting their money into the DSP. So there's many middlemen in this supply chain to get an advertisement sold.
So you're not a DSP or a supply side. You're like operating independently from them.
Yeah, so we were trying to orchestrate it all. Because if we were just a single SSP, we'd have one connection to basically all these DSPs. But by having multiple SSPs, it's almost like we have multiple auctions happening at once, which I think help the publishers, as well as there's a lot of unique demand we're able to access that we would not be able to do if we were just a single supply side partner.
I'm like a media journalist. I've been covering the media industry for years, and I still only have like a surface level understanding of ad tech. And I've really come to believe that unless you're like you work at an ad tech company or you're an actual media buyer, like you really have no concept of how any of this works, other than like a very like how you understand that there's some kind of real time bidding coming in, and that it's choosing ads based on that, and that like the people on the advertising side can set parameters for the quality of site or keyword blocking and stuff like that. So you understand at a very high level, but like you really don't understand at that more granular level.
I mean, don't feel bad. I've been in this for, I don't even know how many years, 10 plus, like doing this exclusively, and almost 20 years. And we still need to learn new things. And I would say most people have more of a superficial knowledge of how ad tech works, even when you work in this space. It's extremely complex.
Yeah. And so, this is 2014. You create this like proprietary system for the header bidding. So how does that go from? Was it just to start for your own websites?
Yeah, so just for the start of our own websites. But fun fact, I'm very lazy and didn't want to write the same code 4 times. And so I made code that I could deploy it across all 4 of our websites, which actually made this surprisingly easy when one of our food fanatic contributors who was with the same ad network was asking, hey, I write for your site. Can you do me a favor and also monetize my inventory? And so our editor at the time, a food fanatic, Amber, was basically good friends with a lot of these food bloggers. And so we took on one as like a favor. We're like, you're not really supposed to rep inventory you don't own without disclosing it. It's a whole different business model. But we're like, what's one? It's fine. Hopefully no one's listening that's going to go back and claw back some money from 10 plus years ago. But yeah, so we basically represented that site. And then we went up to about 6 sites before we realized we are really crushing it for these publishers because there was nothing like it at the time. And that is when we basically decided we were going to pivot the business to being an ad management term was that we came up with. There wasn't really a term for it. Now they call us sales houses in the industry. But we were one of the first, and that's what we pivoted to.
So, like, why do you think that you survived? Because there's so many huge players in the ad tech world. And, like, the thing that kills me is, like, I always thought blog ads was such a brilliant product. And it was, like, I like that it was native self-fulfillment, native advertising. Like, you literally did not need to know anything about advertising to figure out how blog ads work. Like, I've bought ads on blog ads back when I worked at, like, a marketing firm. And like, you look at the genius of like Google AdWords and Facebook ads and Instagram ads, it's because like, yeah, like big, large account holders can do it, but anybody can start an account on Facebook, any small business, and start dabbling in ad buying and then start ramping it up. And yeah, maybe if you're buying millions and millions of impressions, you could then hire, a professional media buyer. But like, I think that low entry point and that native and especially the native advertising, like making actual content, was the key to the success. And like blog ads was one of the earliest ones to the self-serve native advertising, and they died. And I've talked to Henry Blodgett, and he said that it was just because he was undercapitalized. He was completely bootstrapped, and when all these ad networks came in and started offering like guaranteed amounts and stuff like that. But then there was also like Federated Media. So like, why do you think a lot of these like original advertising companies just kind of got subsumed by like the larger programmatic ecosystem?
Thank you for reminding me of some of the ones. Federated, we worked with Federated for a bit. There were so many names back then.
Pajamas Media, I don't know if they still exist.
What was it called?
Pajamas Media. It was like a right-wing advertising, like Instapundit. All the right-wing blogs use Pajamas Media.
Interesting. Did not work with them. I also did not have a right-wing website or any political sites for a while. So first I want to cover something I think that you hit on that's very interesting. I don't think anyone really goes after the SMB market or the small business market in the way that AdWords does. Google has built an incredible business on just these small businesses, and Meta as well. Like, I think the reason why Meta or Facebook gets so much advertising spend is exactly what you described. Like, if you're starting a small brand, that is the easiest way to go sell ads. I wish there was more of that focused on what we call the open web. So publishers, besides Google. Google controls everything, and Google sends most of the AdWords to its search and to YouTube, and not necessarily to blogger websites. I think there's a ton of potential for someone to launch one of those.
Yeah, I've been wanting someone to launch like
today.
Yeah, I've been wanting someone to launch like a native advertising program for, like, you sort of get it with Taboo, or what are those Chumbox Taboola and stuff like that. Like, that's sort of getting there, but yeah, keep on going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, Taboola and Outbrain, I have so many opinions on. We'll skip over those, but yeah, those are native ads for sure and easy to sign up for. But yeah, great potential for that. And now I even lost my train of thought because you got me so distracted by what I
was just talking about, like, why did all these like early advertising players kind of like die and not survive that whole 2010s era?
Yeah, I think honestly a lot of it is just, it was very manual at the time. You had to have large sales teams. So I looked to, BlogHer again, who we used to work with. Most of their staff was ad sales. So in order to sell like what's called an IO business, you don't just need sellers hitting up and getting that money. You need an entire support team behind them. You need to be designing creatives. You need to have pitch decks. For every 8, like if maybe you had 20 sellers, you'd probably have a 50-person support staff. It was crazy, just the human capital you needed in order to do that. And honestly, as it just got more competitive, someone like us, like, we took most of their publishers because we were very scalable. We were a very small team at the time. Like, we didn't need much because we were just operating off of what was called open marketplace. And we had our sellers only selling what are called private marketplace deals. So rather than needing a giant support staff, I can have one of my sellers hook up with the agency, get access to almost those same budgets. They're slightly different at the agencies. And we just plug them in to like PubMatic or Magnite or AdX or wherever we're selling it. and it just automatically happens, our sales. Like the collection is done by AdX. We don't have to have like giant accounting teams. Like our salespeople can literally be a one person show and sell and not have that giant staff.
Because like Pugmatic is like handling all the support, all those other roles that you're talking about, and they're just
Right.
and so you have a sales staff now that is doing more direct sold ads that will the reason we got introduced is because I'm friendly with Tegan Goddard at Political Wire. So like you have a salesperson who can like sell ads directly on his site.
Yeah. So typically the way we'll work is I love Political Wire, but we won't have a sales team say, hey, I'm just going to sell Political Wire. We'll go for all, we have a lot of political sites, or we'll have, we'll go across the entire network if they're trying to reach a certain audience. So really we're selling at scale, which is I think what is really exciting to agencies. Like they can talk to us and we are, whatever it may be, top 20 properties on the internet with all of our sites combined. So you can reach the scale as an advertiser just by working with Mediavine. And so, yeah, we will sell direct, or what we call programmatic direct, or programmatic guaranteed are some of the terms, but a lot of it's just what are called PMPs, private marketplace deals. So deals are just always spending on all of these sites.
And you're probably not like selling to Coca-Cola directly or whomever. Like you're selling to like ad agencies and stuff like that.
So what we have learned is, again, like I'm always trying to build things in a scalable way. Most of the spend is controlled by what are called the holding companies. So the largest agencies are agencies of that, like these holding companies that own so many different agencies.
Yeah,
You
like
wouldn't believe
500
it. I think,
agencies. Yeah.
yeah. And there's like, I think, depends on who you ask. There's 4 to 6 holdcos that control most of the spend on the internet. So a lot of our sellers' time is just focused on working with them. But we do have some brand direct sellers because, I don't know, let's take Procter and Gamble or Target or some of these brands. Like they do a lot of things in house, and so you have to work direct with some of the larger larger advertisers on the internet.
Yeah. I don't understand how these agencies don't run into like antitrust issues because like their entire acquisition strategy is like basically anti-competitive because like I've worked at PRA and marketing agencies. I know what it's like to quit one of those agencies and go off on your own. If you have the skill set, you can go off on your own and make way more money because you're just charging the clients, and you're getting all the money you're charging them. And then you could also charge a lot less than the larger agencies, which because they have high overhead, they can only accept like a certain level of client that can pay like $50,000 a month, and anything below that, they just can't make a profit. So what they do is they're fine with like their employees leaving and starting their own agencies. But the second that those agencies get large enough to where they can start regularly competing for those larger, Fortune 500 companies, that's the moment that they buy them. And the whole reason for buying them is just eliminating competition from the marketplace, I feel like. But I don't know. That's a whole other rant. But so how did you go from like a handful of food blogs to like an entire network? Like, did you have to establish criteria for letting sites in? Because like obviously like with programmatic, there's like so many programmatic networks that keep on getting caught with these dog shit websites that are just like what is it called, the made for advertising, or like the sites that are just made to optimize ads on them. They don't actually produce like good content, like, or even like straight up like false and fake news, AI slop and stuff like that. So like how did you develop a criteria for how to let like websites into your network?
Yeah, that is a great question because MFA, or made for advertising, has honestly like plagued our industry, and they take a lot of ad dollars away, which is why you see all these companies will pop up. They'll just try to serve these MFA sites, make some quick bucks, and then shut down. There's like hundreds of ad networks that pop up, probably every month. So we have focused on since the beginning that I think really differentiated us. Well, one, we had obviously word of mouth that mostly kept us within the food blog space for a while before we started moving on to other niches. And fun fact, we actually did not even have any sales staff selling our publishers. We were only selling advertisers for basically the previous 8 years. The last 2 years, we have brought people in to finally start expanding beyond where we are. So we were word of mouth, which I think kept us within verticals that had quality content. But we have always very much valued like high quality content. Now, today, that is really focused on human creators and making sure we're not focused on like AI slop, for example. But it's also, even back then, like the Hollywood Gossip was probably, sadly, our lowest quality site, which we owned. Like that wasn't the type of site we were going after. We wanted something that an advertiser would see and be excited to buy advertising inventory on.
Yeah. And so what criteria did you like? I was reading like a Reddit AMA with you, and they were referencing like the minimum threshold you have to hit and stuff like that. So what was the kind of application process for joining your network?
It was always, we have always tried to put it low. I have always tried to make the network as inclusive as we can, as long as you, again, have high quality content. One of the reasons we focus on that is because, well, one, I think that is our strength in numbers. We have 17,000 publishers today. I would not hit that number if I was only working with the ComScore top 500, which are certainly ad networks that would never even dream of working with what they call the long tail, these smaller sites. So we've always had a lower threshold. I think it used to be 10,000. We had to raise it to 25,000. It just became, as we became too popular, like we wanted to be able to still deliver the same quality service. So we had to keep raising it. And then we had COVID happen where everyone became a blogger and suddenly our applications like doubled or quadrupled. So we raised it again. And then what we have done recently is we introduced a new product called Journey in the last couple of years. And that is designed for, honestly, like you blog for maybe a few months and you get a reach of about 1,000 sessions a month, or it might take you a year or two. But we want to join you early on because I know a lot of people just give up if they're not monetizing. Like we did it for years without making money, but I know not everyone has that luxury or that patience. And so we want to make sure that you can like basically monetize out the gate.
And so, how does Journey differentiate? Other than having a lower threshold, what's different about it compared to your normal kind of publishers that or the ad product you're running with your normal publishers?
So the actual technology behind it is mostly the same. We just have a few differentiating factors. First, it is really self-serve. So the idea is you can sign up and have ads running on your site without we don't need to put like a human being behind it and trying to optimize all the ad positions. That is a big part of what we do with some of our larger sites. We're in there constantly trying to tweak your site. We can't do that for the 7,000 plus Journey sites that we have live. So we had to build an automated system that could help optimize those ads automatically for where they should be placed. We also have more of a self-serve support model with that, where you're more forum-based support and not like working with our support team. So again, just trying to be able to figure out how can we do this at scale. As far as how the actual product differentiates from a publisher's perspective in terms of earnings, it's because we run what are called different seats at the exchanges. So we want to keep the Mediavine inventory that we know is the highest quality separate from Journey, where you're a little earlier on. And I'll be honest, some scammers will try to come in through Journey. It's a lot easier if you're starting a brand new site to come in through a self-serve platform and then, show up looking good and then try to change your product a few months later. We're constantly trying to cull that to keep the quality as high as we can. But we wanted to make sure that we are protected. I would never want to damage the earnings of a Mediavine publisher as we go to expand.
For the main Mediavine network, like what percentage is like independent publishers, and how much are kind of more traditional legacy publishers?
We are mostly independent publishers. Something that's been amazing is that like most of our publishers are like 1 to 2 person teams that are writing the content, doing everything themselves. That's kind of been like the bread and butter of Mediavine. We recently have introduced an enterprise product where we're starting to work with more legacy publishers. Historically, those are much more unique setups, and they have been around for so long that as you're going to tag up their site, it's not as simple as saying, here's an ad script. They also have their own ad sales teams. Like it's a whole world enterprise. We are slowly dipping our toes in it and growing there. But for now, I would say we're mostly independent publishers.
Interesting. So obviously the web looks a lot different now than it did in 2014. A lot of like consumption has flowed towards these platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Video is way more dominant now. And then obviously there's way less traffic, not only coming from sites like Facebook and Twitter, but also Google. Like there's every single report we see come out says Google is sending less and less traffic because of like AI overviews and stuff like that. So what have you noticed in terms of trends, in terms of like CPMs, like it being able to like remain high rates, but also just like traffic to the publishers within your network?
Yeah, I say so. We have absolutely seen as an industry, I would say the entire internet is seeing more fragmented traffic and less traffic from Google search, like less clicks coming from Google search. I hear Google search is growing, but the amount of clicks they're actually sending to publishers is decreasing from, as you mentioned, AI overviews. What do they call it? Zero clicks results. We are seeing that network wide, the traffic is down, say this year compared to a few years ago. of what we're seeing for individual publishers. But what's really interesting is that some publishers get hit much harder than others, especially if you are Google dependent. Some of them were completely wiped out from some of these changes. And some of the bigger publishers see little to no impact, and in some cases actually increased traffic from Google, which is crazy because that goes against every headline you are seeing. But again, the results vary. But as an aggregate, I would say traffic is definitely down.
Yeah,
I wish
Google has come
CPMs were
out.
paid.
Yeah, Google has come out and said that the number of clicks have not gone. They're redistributed, but they haven't gone down. That even though the number of clicks per session has gone down, there are now so many more sessions because people are using Google search more often as just like an answer engine, that technically the raw number of clicks it's sending to websites has remained steady. But because the websites that answered the questions that are most often typed into, the question engine, basically the chatbot, they're the ones seeing drastic decreases. But this maybe speaks to what you're talking about. It's like other websites that are less kind of like the more SEO optimized ones might not be seeing as much of a fall.
Exactly. I used to call not the friendliest of terms, but more if you're writing for search engines, you're writing for the robots. I'm not going to use any mean terms about these sites. A lot of those just got wiped out because exactly like if an AI overview can give the answer of what your user is searching for and like 200 words at the top or less 40 words at the top, you didn't really provide a lot of value to the internet. And those are the sites we have seen completely wiped out. What's unfortunate is we do see also high quality sites that are writing actually for the users that also got wiped out because sometimes AI overviews, I think, overstretch what they should be showing. Like you could get it to show an entire recipe, which is not appropriate. Like Google should not be doing that. That at the end of the day is just taking content. But for the most part, yeah, you're right. I would say if you are writing content for your readers, you have a loyal user base, you are well distributed across social channels, have a big following. A lot of those publishers are still thriving. Maybe not at the same level when they were getting easy Google traffic, but there's still money to be made for publishers is what we're seeing.
So is like I also never see like good stats. It'll say like Google traffic is down, but it doesn't say whether any of that traffic's been replaced by other things. Because obviously, if you're saving users time in terms of searching through stuff, they're going to spend that time consuming other content. Maybe it's getting like all that extra time is being absorbed by like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and stuff like that. But is the overall traffic down as much as the Google traffic is down, or what have you noticed on that front?
So I think it varies based on social platform. Like Facebook is one of the weirdest. Like some days they will never send out traffic. They try to keep everyone on site. Then people figure out ways, to put the link in the first comment and they're back to getting traffic again. So we're seeing Facebook back again when it was gone for so long. Pinterest has always been a great driver of traffic, though lately they've been overwhelmed with AI slop that I don't think they're sending as much. But what's really exciting to me is seeing names you haven't heard of or names that haven't been relevant in 15 years, like popping back up into our top 10 traffic sources. And really one of the coolest is, and I know you have a big newsletter following, like people are really just getting back in the newsletters, which is, predates even my time on the internet. And it's amazing to see that email is still so popular.
Yeah, and like I get way more impressions to through people just opening my newsletter in the inbox than I do like coming to my newsletter like on the website on the Substack, because I embedded like the Google Analytics code so I can see how much traffic I'm getting. And so like what's the opportunity there for you now that like a lot of independent publishers are becoming so newsletter centric? Like I get several 100,000 impressions a month of people opening my newsletters, which is way above the threshold that you need to join Mediavine. But obviously I can't join Mediavine because it's like mainly a platform for monetizing like website visits. I have like something called a newsletter sponsorship index. It's like a data product I sell where I track who's sponsoring like across hundreds of newsletters. So I do occasionally see some programmatic type platforms that are being used in newsletters, but it seems like programmatic is not as common with newsletters as it is with websites. So like, do you think there's an opportunity there? Are you building any programmatic stuff for newsletters?
I think that's probably the number one request we get from a lot of our publishers is to help them monetize their email newsletters. So I can tell you why it's very hard to get programmatic in a second. But what I can tell you is that we mostly will encourage publishers at this point. You want to own your audience as much as you can, own your platform. I know you have built a loyal following, so I'm not going to tell you to leave the place where you're at, but as much as you can, like sending them to your own site is the best way to monetize. You can control much more of the environment than you can, even if that, and I'm, what is the Beehive is like starting to get into ads and all these guys are getting into it. Like you don't control that experience. It's not your site at the end of the day. So we'll always encourage people still to have a blog. That said, yeah, we're always exploring new ways to monetize. One of the problems with email and why it doesn't work with programmatic is one, there's no JavaScript inside of email. And almost every ad right now in programmatic is dependent upon JavaScript. The second we see is that there's what's called a time to live, or how long a bid is good for. And so typically on a website, if we go and request a bunch of ads for your page, we have to serve them within 30 seconds. Some people will be generous and give you 5 minutes. The problem with an email is you have to, ahead of time, request the bids, put them into the email. You can't do it at time of open because there's no JavaScript. And so you're really asking that that bid to be good for a minimum of 24 hours, right? I'm sure most of your readers open within 24 hours, but you can't guarantee they open it within 5 minutes or an hour. And so you really have two issues that I think we'd have to solve as an industry. And what we need is more excitement from what are called the demand side partners, the DSPs or the agencies, to wanting to actually buy it. And I think they should. That is some of the most engaged readers you are ever going to have on the internet today.
And then obviously there are like programmatic advertising on podcasts, like dynamic insertion, and then like there's networks for embedding basically autoplay silent videos in articles that run programmatic ads in front of it. Do you see that as an opportunity? Is that something that you currently offer?
So audio, no. I think audio is, again, a very complex, fragmented space right now. It is not it would be, again, an interesting opportunity for us. And that one is much more programmatic friendly, even though it is still the same issue as email that you have to do it server side. Most of that stuff is at time of play, and there are standards around that, because that is interestingly something the industry is excited about, is audio. I don't know why they're not excited about email. Maybe because it's from the 70s. I don't know what they're harping on it with it. Right, but they should be.
I mean, Substack Beehive is built in it, and then Substack on its agenda is like building some kind of advertising marketplace / network. So we'll see what they have to. They might have enough aggregate demand to where they could actually do something interesting. But anyway, keep on going.
I'm sure, but the problem is we call those walled gardens in our space. They're not going to let third-party programmatic hook in, or like it won't help our side of the ecosystem, which we call the open web, of trying to get this spend happening everywhere. They end up being more like a Meta, where it's like a self-contained, you buy the ads, we control the placement, we control all the verification, the reporting. I wish you could be like, hey, Beehive, let's go work together, and let's call Substack and be like, let's all do this together. But all these guys try to reinvent the wheel rather than doing it using existing standards.
Okay, so you're not doing audio, but it sounds like maybe video is something you're interested in.
So we definitely do a lot of video today. So our publishers can use our built-in video player to upload their content. It monetizes very well. The problem is what we end up having to do is a lot of autoplay, as you described, where you kind of get to the page and it autoplays, because what we have found is most users don't click play on videos on a website. They do it on YouTube. They'll do it on Facebook Shorts. They'll do it through every other experience. But the web, that's not primarily what you came to that page for. You would have just gone to YouTube if you were looking for a certain video.
Well, especially since most of these videos are barely related to the content that's, it's only slightly related anyway.
Exactly. So we end up with a lot of autoplay inventory, which in our industry is called accompanying content now. It used to be called outstream. It doesn't pay as well. If you are an actual video creator, generally you're going to make the most money. I shouldn't sell someone else's product, but on something like YouTube, right? That is where they find the most monetization success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I interviewed Ricky Sutton, the founder of Uvu, a few years ago, and he said that video inventory on a publisher site will the CPMs are multiple what you can get from a display ad.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was saying. If you can get click to play, your CPMs could be 5-10 times as much.
Oh, but autoplay doesn't do that. Doesn't have great CPMs.
No. So autoplay is much closer to display. I mean, it still has a premium, but let's say it has a 50% premium, but it's not going to have a 10x premium.
Yeah. So how big is your company now, and what's kind of the structure in terms of skills and staffing?
I should always know our headcount. Close to about 140. We are still primarily very heavy on engineering, product side. We always look at ourselves as a tech company first. We also obviously have to have excellent customer experience when you have this many clients. So it's just a lot of support and account managers as well. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, we have the sales staff and then the massive support staff you need around all of that.
And do you still do any of your own content, or is that completely closed down?
So we've actually sold most of our own sites to the editors that were running them for us. We thought that was the best story for those sites, and we'd continue to get the love. I don't know. I think of Carissa, who ran TV Fanatic with us for I don't even know how many years, well over 10 years, 15 years. So she's still running TV Fanatic, still a Mediavine publisher. We no longer own the site. The Hollywood Gossip is the one I won't give up. And not because it's necessarily a large percentage of our revenue, but we like to use it for testing. Testing our own product. Obviously, we love to, if we're going to do a unique new ad experience, we're going to run it on the Hollywood Gossip before we try it on a publisher site. But also to learn, we still have to know what trends, what still works. This industry has changed so much in the last 20 years. And so we use the Hollywood Gossip to still do those things today. So that one will never die.
Yeah, there used to be a lot more experiments with running a media company as well as an ad network. There was Say Media, where they tried to own some of their own properties but also have a massive ad network, and that just never seemed to work out. Obviously the Washington Post had Arc or whatever, which it still exists, but they've completely separated as companies and operate independently. Why do you think that is? It's just you got to be good at one thing and you can't be good at two things at once.
That is generally my new perspective on a lot of this. I think when we were, I'm just going to say, flush with cash because we're bootstrapped and we were just getting so many clients, right? How can we reinvest and best help our publishers? I thought at the time was building them a lot of tools. And so we built a WordPress theme. We built a recipe card for our food bloggers, a how-to card for our craft bloggers. We were just building everything we could to help them. And we have found is, exactly, jack of all trades, master of none. It's a distraction. I can't even tell you. I put very little effort into the Hollywood Gossip unless we're going to test something or I want to try something new, and I dump it on a team. And if it doesn't have the CEO's attention, it doesn't have the people directly below me, and it doesn't have the people directly below them. And this is just what happens. You can't have that many successful products unless they are run as separate companies. I'm sure a large company like Apple is laughing at me for saying this, but they have almost CEOs of these individual lines. You can't do that unless you have massive scale. And that is why we have found our best success is focusing on what we're best at, and that is advertising.
And what does it feel like? Penske Media just filed a lawsuit against Google in terms of it's supposedly creating a monopoly and stuff like that. You said that you're completely bootstrapped. Is that what you said?
Oh, we are.
So what does it feel like being a bootstrap company going up against the Googles, the Metas of the world? How do you feel? Do you feel threatened? Do you feel do you feel like you're nimble and you're always going to be able to figure out your specific niche that they don't want to touch? What is that like?
I mean, it's never fun to go up against a monopoly or Google. Luckily, I think we're more partners with them than competitors. I mean,
until they decide they want to be competitive with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I won't pretend they don't also enter into our space in a lot of places, but that's the best way you have to look at it. I don't have their resources. But I will say, yeah, you're right. We are way more nimble. I mean, the best thing about not having funding is that you don't have debt. So you can make changes. You can scale up and down as needed. I can make longer term business decisions that maybe wouldn't pay off for other companies. I don't know, if I'm going to invest in, let's take newsletter, not saying we are, that might be 3 or 4 years before it actually pays off and is profitable for the business. That's a tough sell if you're owned by a PE company and all you have to worry about are hitting year over year growth or quarterly growth. Are you going to invest in that? No, that's going to hurt your EBITDA. You're trying to sell next year. So we are able to be more agile. I think we're able to really follow where the trends are going a little bit better. But no, I can't go and say, hey, I'm going to take down Google or Amazon. I have to work with them.
Yeah. So thinking about where the web is going more over the next few years, a little bit more newsletter focus, a little bit more short form vertical focus, increased emphasis. Now everybody's trying to compete to get on connected TVs. What do you want to be doing 2 or 3 years from now that you're not doing now?
I wish I could be doing connected TV, but that is owned by 4 channels. We all know the 4 channels we all watch on connected TV. There can't be that many ad firms that exist just for 4 companies. We need things that, are more independent and owned by a large number of publishers. I mean, I think, I shouldn't spoil all the things that we're building, but yeah, we want to diversify as a company. I think the type of publishers we work with, well, that's no secret. We're expanding in verticals. I think the future, as you already identified, is going to be more different experiences than just long form content for a lifestyle site. So we want to make sure that we're meeting readers where they are and like where the advertisements are. That's ultimately where Mediavine has to be. So a lot of enthusiast sites that we're seeing a lot of success with. I know you just had one recently on your podcast that works with Mediavine, like a tech site. Like those are less impacted by some of these search trends that we're seeing than say a lifestyle site, because it's a lot harder for AI overview to help you correctly, I should say, solve some of your tech issues. It'll certainly give you some steps that might not do anything, but like where we see that like things are where readers are most passionate is where we are seeing the most success, and that's where we want to go to.
All right, Eric, those are all the questions I have for you. Where can people find you online?
That's a great question. I am terrible with, I have been a social media following. So you should follow Mediavine. We're on all the major social channels. It's always Mediavine is always the name.
Awesome. Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.